What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another top 5 video. Today's video, this is going to be a good one. It is really important. What we did with this is combine some players that we had on other lists, players that we really feel strong about that are going in the earlier rounds. We took one from each position. So one quarterback, one tight end, one receiver, one running back, and then also threw in a late round guy and created this list for you guys of the top 5 players to avoid in 2018 fantasy football. Before we do jump into the list though, don't forget to enter the giveaways. We are going to be giving away signed memorabilia all offseason. All you have to do to enter is follow both Nick and I on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you'll be automatically entered to win. Also, don't forget, we have the deal with DraftKings. All you have to do to get our premium rankings, that comes with risk ratings, target shares, player breakdowns, projected ranges of outcomes, strategies for each stage of the draft, and access to our exclusive members only Facebook group. All you have to do to get access to that is, instead of paying the regular price of $20, all you have to do is create an account on DraftKings, sign up, deposit $10, and you will be getting access to our premium rankings absolutely free. And who knows, that $10, if you listen to us and you take our DFS advice, you could turn that into more money. We could literally be paying you to use our draft rankings. Clearly, it's a great deal, but let's move on to the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which receiver who had at least 10 targets in the red zone had the absolute worst red zone catch rate. The answer to that was T.Y. Hilton, and the winner was Logan Devine. Thank you very much. And as we all know, T.Y. Hilton, he's a small guy. He's never going to be a red zone guy. We don't predict him to have a ton of touchdowns even coming into this season, and that's with projecting a healthy Andrew Luck. Obviously, his red zone catch rate is probably going to be better this year because when you move from Jacoby Brissett to Luck, you're just going to see improvement all around. But on to today's stat of the day question. We're going to stick with red zone. Which receiver led the league in catch rate inside the 10-yard line? Okay, so which receiver led the league in catch rate in 2017 inside the 10-yard line? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins. Now, on to the top 5 list of the players to avoid. We think it's very fitting to start this list at the quarterback position, since in general we avoid taking quarterbacks early, and it should come as no surprise that leading this list is none other than Deshaun Watson himself of the Houston Texans. Realistically, we just don't understand how Deshaun Watson's ADP has not fallen yet. Preseason is already here, and as of recording, he is currently ranked as the second quarterback coming off the board based on current ADP, and the experts' consensus rankings on fantasypros.com has him at QB4. Clearly, quarterback 4 is a little bit more reasonable, but it's still a high expectation for Deshaun Watson coming into 2018. He reached an extremely high end of variance in a positive way. Deshaun Watson ended up throwing a touchdown on 1 in every 10.3 attempts. Not completions, attempts. For reference, Aaron Rodgers, who is one of the most accurate and efficient quarterbacks, especially in the red zone in the entire league and throughout history, has a career average of a touchdown every 15.6 attempts. So literally, it would take Rodgers over 50% more attempts to score the same amount of touchdowns at the rate that Watson did last season. Does that sound very realistic to you? I don't think so. Now, if we do want to move it over to completions, Deshaun Watson had a touchdown every 6.6 completions. And I'm not even counting his rushing touchdowns, which he did have 2 in 7 games. Now, to everybody else who's hearing this, they probably think that's great. That's a selling point. You think Deshaun Watson is the greatest player to ever touch the football field. But if you ask us, I think it's insanity. It's going to be impossible to replicate. And that's not the only red flag that Watson has. Now, nobody is mentioning how bad this defense was in 2017. They allowed a league high 27.2 points last season. Like I said, league high. The 31st ranked team, because remember there's only 32 teams, was allowing 1.6 points fewer than the Texans. 1.6 points in the NFL on average is a giant gap. And for those of you who wonder if maybe that was skewed because the defense got worse once Watson left, false. While Watson was the QB, this team allowed an average of 26.9 points per game, which is just a mere 0.3 points less per game. So it's very negligible, and the team itself would have still ranked dead last in the league at 32 of 32. Coming into 2018, this team is going to be improved on defense. You just don't have Jadeveon Clowney and JJ Watt on the field and rank 32nd. Remember, JJ Watt has won Defensive Player of the Year, and while he has dealt with injuries, he very well could do it again in 2018. Also, they signed Tyrann Mathieu and 2 other corners to help bolster up that pass defense. So for shootout potential, Watson may not need to do as much when it comes to the passing game, and that actually could be a good thing for this team in their future. He's coming off an ACL tear, which could really limit a guy like Watson, who's a mobile quarterback. And we're not saying that he can't make a full recovery. It just means that he may have trouble trusting his own body, at least to start initially. And this team, if they're smart, they have to think long term. They don't want to put Deshaun Watson out there to get hurt. His initial injury happened during practice, so it's a little different than comparing it to someone like Carson Wentz, who really dove for a touchdown and that's how he injured him. But you just don't want Deshaun Watson to get hurt, especially since you see the type of potential that he can have for this team in the future. So basically, there are just a number of reasons why Deshaun Watson is due for a down year compared to what he posted on a per game average last season. And hey, he may still finish top 8. The only problem, he's going as quarterback 2. And believe us, in your home leagues, in your office leagues, he's going to be a major target for a lot of people. I wouldn't even be surprised if some people in those types of leagues take him ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Avoid him at that draft spot at all costs. Just remember, it's a very deep position. Moving on, we have Evan Engram of the New York Giants. He comes in as our tight end player to avoid this year. And Engram, he's an easy one to talk about. Now, I know there's a lot of Evan Engram fans out there. I'm not going to be able to convince everybody, but in order to love Engram this year, you do have to ignore a lot of facts. You have to excuse a lot of things and push a certain narrative in order for him to succeed. There are way too many things going against him this year, and I'll start to dive into them right now. One of the glaring red flags that you notice immediately when you're comparing last year to this season is just the sheer amount of weapons this team has as opposed to last year. And then you also have to factor in how inefficient he was on a per target basis. And those games where Engram did really perform and he played really well and he was the player to own, those came when there was no receivers on this team. Odell Beckham, out. Brandon Marshall, out. Sterling Shepard, out. Not only that, this team didn't just lack weapons in the receiving game. There was no capable running backs that they could lean on out of the backfield. This year, it's a completely different story. Odell's coming back, and obviously, everyone believes in him. He's being drafted as wide receiver 3, so if you don't, you're in the minority. I definitely believe in him. I personally have him as my wide receiver 2. That's neither here nor there. That's splitting hairs. But excluding Odell, you have Saquon Barkley, drafted not 4th overall, not 3rd overall, but 2nd overall. And he's not a Leonard Fournette. This is a guy who was drafted for his superior pass catching abilities. He's going to catch a lot of balls, and I'm talking 60 plus, which means that is going to garner a large target market share. Barkley is single-handedly going to change the whole identity of this team on offense. Having an effective run game is going to definitely slow the game down. Then also factor, this team is not going to be playing from behind in every single game like they did last season. Remember, they finished 3-13. They are going to be in a position certain times of the season where they're going to be up late in the game and they're going to be able to run the ball. If you ask me, I think the Giants themselves are one of the better teams that you can bet on this season. Right now, they're coming in at 50-1 underdogs, but that's just a side note. One thing I've been hearing a lot is people talk about how Pat Shurmur is coming in and what he's been able to do with the tight ends and how that makes Evan Engram much more valuable this season. And I want to make it clear, yes, I do believe that Engram will have his games. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get yardage. But when it comes to Pat Shurmur, just remember, he was the offensive coordinator the 2 years when Kyle Rudolph's target share dropped from 132 to 81. If there's something in this offense that's working, he's going to stick with it. And when you have a guy like Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham is significantly better than Stephon Diggs or Adam Thielen, and as much as we love Cook, Saquon Barkley should be much better than Dalvin Cook. So all this adds up to Evans is just simply not going to get over 7 targets per game like he did last season. And with a reduction of targets, you just have to bank on basically efficiency. And that is an area where in 2017, when he did get a large opportunity share, he severely struggled in the efficiency department. He had 11 total drops, which was absolutely monstrous for the tight end position. He also ranked 11th in yards per route run, which if you break it down, that is absolutely abysmal considering the involvement that he had in the offense. Not only that, but he ranked 26 of 30 in his catch rate on catchable deep targets. So it's easy to see how if he didn't get such a high volume share, he would not have been a stud whatsoever. Now in 2018, we can easily predict that he's not going to get the same amount of volume, which means he will likely be more similar to those later round tight ends. And when I say that, I just mean that They're going to have their good games and they're going to have their bad games. More oftentimes than not, it's going to be reliant on a touchdown. And that's okay. Like I said, most tight ends, they get their points that way. The only difference is Evan Engram is costing a 6th round pick this year. Do yourself a favor, avoid Evan Engram at his current draft price and get the better value later in the draft at the tight end position. Moving on to the running back on this list, and it is Miami Dolphins running back Kenyon Drake. Now, admittedly, Kenyon Drake has been a tough player to gauge throughout this offseason. To start, he's had an immense amount of hype surrounding him. Last season, he played extremely well in both rushing and receiving, and his finish for 2017 last year was 883 total yards and 4 touchdowns. That's rather impressive considering he didn't get double-digit carries until the final 5 weeks of the season, and that's where he really lit it up. He averaged 119 yards per game and looked to be the official newest member of the RB1 crew. He appeared to be able to run well, he appeared to be able to catch, and we saw that if everything pans his way, he would be a fantasy asset for some teams. Now, coming into this season, there are a few issues with Drake. Issues that make him too risky of a pick to really count on. First off, Drake has always been prospected as a satellite back as opposed to a 3-down workhorse, which he was kind of put into that role last season. But remember, he has never been a featured back in his entire career. And don't get us wrong, that doesn't mean that he can't turn into a 3-down back. We've seen it in the past. But it is something that you do have to hold against him when we've only seen a small sample. Not only that, when he was being this workhorse type of running back, Miami themselves had no running backs to rely on. Remember, Damian Williams got injured, they traded Jay Ajayi. Drake was the only guy in town. This season, they brought in Frank Gore, and as much as we are all ready for Gore to just retire at this point, if he's on the team, he's getting the carries. And don't forget about rookie running back Kalen Ballage. There is a strong chance that this turns into a full-blown committee, and at the stage of the draft where Kenyon Drake is going, you would be a fool to take a running back that's in a committee. Right now, he's going in the 4th round, pick 406. If he was going later, we may actually like the pick. The problem is this is way too expensive for all the issues that he has. Miami themselves has a projected win total of 6 games. That right there, that indicates how bad this team is expected to be in 2018, and for a running back, you always want them to have positive game scripts. Positive game scripts where they're entering the 4th quarter with a lead. You know that they're going to be heavily relying on the rush in the later stages of the game. That's just not something we can expect from Miami. And last season in 2017, this team ranked 32 of 32 in the amount of rushing attempts that they had. And the grand total of touchdowns that the team scored last year, 4. 16 games, 4 rushing touchdowns. We can expect this team to take a step forward this season, but you're going from a team who is ranked 32 of 32 in rushing attempts and scored 4 rushing touchdowns. It's going to be hard not to see improvement, but how much improvement can you really expect? This team has absolutely no passing threats. You have Stills and Parker, but the passing attack is significantly worse, going from Landry to a combination of Amendola and Albert Wilson. Not to mention the guy leading the team, Ryan Tannehill, hasn't played an NFL game in nearly 2 years. The last time he stepped foot on the football field was December of 2016. So to break it down, you have a guy who can't be relied on when it comes to his volume. You also can't project positive game scripts. There is competition for touches, and you also have no passing game that's going to keep the opposing defenses honest, and a team that's coming from the season before ranking 32nd in the league in rushing attempts and only scoring 4 rushing touchdowns. Besides chasing his production from the final 5 games of last season, there just is not much to look forward to for Kenyon Drake. Could he hit? Maybe. But would it be smart to avoid him? 100%. On to the wide receiver that we have on this list, and that is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we really wanted to love Mike Evans heading into 2017. Believe us, we did. But now, if we had to pick some words that described Evans, he would probably be best described as fool's gold. The reason being is because he comes into draft day with a price tag of being the cheapest wide receiver that has finished as the wide receiver 1. Not just a wide receiver 1, but the wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy just 2 seasons ago. To the everyday Joe who plays in his office league, it sounds like a slam dunk pick. You're getting a big-bodied receiver who's going to get fed targets just like he has been his entire career, but the issue is that's just incorrect. Mike Evans is still big, but the targets are unlikely to come his way the same way that they were in years past. First off, Jameis Winston, he's suspended for the first 3 games. This team is not going to start off very hot. Have fun sitting your second round pick in weeks 1 through 3, or if you don't sit him, you could start him based on his name value and just be disappointed when he sucks. Because, oh, don't forget, they play the Saints, the Eagles, and the Steelers in those first 3 weeks. The starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, none other than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think it's going to surprise nobody when he faces these tough defenses that he's going to be absolutely terrible. But if I was an owner of Mike Evans, it would take some serious balls to be able to sit Mike Evans just after investing a second round pick on him. And honestly, I would just like to avoid that conundrum completely. And that's not the only problem. It gets worse because his schedule is tough the entire season. There's an exception with a few good matchups here and there, but there is no stretch in the entire season where he just goes from easy matchup to easy matchup consecutively. Not to mention, the team is loaded with more weapons than they've ever had before. You have Djax coming into year 2, which for free agent receivers, it's a pretty big deal. OJ Howard, Cameron Brate, and Chris Godwin, who we've talked about a lot on this channel and why we like him so much. So in the passing game, it's easy to see that each individual player has the ability to step up and at least produce in their specific roles, and each player should be able to play their role extremely well. But then let's talk about the run game. You have Ronald Jones, who was a clear investment from this team to try to gain a new identity in the run game. It's something that they really haven't been able to figure out while Doug Martin was the primary back, dealing with suspension, dealing with injury. So this is more or less a clean slate for them, and they are going to want to get this running game going as well. Now, all these signs, they do point to Evans being one of the biggest disappointments when it comes to expectations versus reality. And when you leave the draft and you have Mike Evans, you're probably going to look at the past few seasons and think you're getting a good deal on him and chop up the value to recency bias, but in reality, you're going to be chasing his old stats and not taking into account all the issues that he's going to be facing in 2018. The fifth and final player on this list is the late round guy that we think you all should be avoiding, and that player is Doug Martin of the Oakland Raiders. Now, would you guys believe it, but Doug Martin has now crept up into the 10th round in standard leagues. And in PPR, he's in the 11th. This dude's climbing. And you know why? It's because he's on the Raiders, and you will not find one report online that says Martin is struggling in training camp. In fact, every single thing you read about Martin would make you think that he is going to be the bona fide starter and that he is a stud and that you should always target him late in drafts. Now, from the outside looking in, you probably see a guy who's been a top 10 running back multiple times in his career. He's coming to a team with a good offensive line, and the only competition for touches is a 32-year-old running back who most people consider washed up and probably cares more about pleasing the fans of Oakland more than his production on the field. Now, the problem with that narrative is that Doug Martin is actually the washed up one in this offense. Do you guys know what Doug Martin's yards per carry average are over the past 19 games? You're not going to believe me when I say this, but through a 19 game sample, the last 19 games he's played, he's averaged 2.9 yards per carry. That's absolutely insane. It doesn't even make sense why he has a job right now, especially considering he's always suspended or injured. So he's super inefficient, he's always suspended or injured, and when you dive into his statistics even further, he looks even worse. Last season, he ranked 53rd of a total of 53 RBs in elusiveness rating, so dead last. 45 of 53 in breakaway percentage, and if we're talking in the receiving game, he dropped 4 of 13 catchable targets for an astounding 31% drop rate. Of players in the entire league with 7 or more targets, once again, he ranked dead last. And no, this type of poor efficiency is not new for Martin. 52 of 53 in breakaway percentage in 2016, 38 of 42 in elusiveness rating in 2014. And as much as Martin is younger than 32, he's no young buck himself. He's coming in at 29, and he's missed 28 games in the past 5 seasons, which averages out to just under 6 games per year. Lynch, on the other hand, he looked incredible in the last 8 games of the season. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry. Throughout the entire season, he was 4th in elusiveness rating, 11th in breakaway percentage, 6th in yards created, and 2nd in tackles evaded. So playing well in all of these categories, clearly you could see that Lynch was one of the better backs in the league last season. He just got limited opportunities. So if you're this team and you want to win, who do you think they're going to want to give the ball to? A terrible Doug Martin or a quote unquote washed up Marshawn Lynch? You be the judge. But But for those of you who think Martin could potentially be the change of pace receiving back, just remember Doug Martin has never been a strong receiver throughout his entire career, and excluding his rookie season, he has never had more than 42 targets. And also, I mentioned he does have that incredibly high drop rate, so it's only a matter of time if they do try to use him in the receiving game that they just realize it is a complete waste of time, and overall there isn't one singular area where Martin looks actually good. Every stat you look in, he is subpar in every category and has been for a while. So there just really isn't a case that you can make for why he can succeed. And when you're trying to pick late round guys, you're trying to create these narratives, you have to put the puzzle pieces together. You have to use the stats at your disposal to create a potential outcome for this player to succeed. And for Martin, we just can't do that. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. We really hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy the video, please hit that like button. It helps out the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.